Hey, good afternoon, CAD 240. Hope you guys are doing well. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and start looking at Inventor and kind of becoming familiar with the Inventor interface. We're also going to talk about kind of the workflow in terms of how we use Solid Professor and how we use D2L and how we use Inventor and how all those are going to work together this semester. You will have a short, well, somewhat short assignment in Solid Professor. The class is now set up for you guys in there. But first, let's just take a look at the Inventor interface, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So if you are familiar with SolidWorks, if you've used SolidWorks before, it's going to be pretty similar. It's going to be there's going to be some things that are in different places, but the workflow inside of Inventor is pretty similar to SolidWorks. If you're coming from AutoCAD, it's going to be really different. Your approach to drawing is going to be an adjustment because the approach is different. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through kind of how I look at Inventor and how I navigate Inventor to begin with. And then I'll point you to an assignment in Solid Professor. Solid Professor will, in a lot of ways, kind of reiterate a lot of the same things I've been talking about, but that's good. It's good to hear things a couple different times. And then you'll have a very short assignment, a little drawing assignment at the end. At the beginning of a lot of these classes, it's kind of Solid Professor heavy. There's to get the orientation and to get your feet underneath you. There's just you know, you gotta put in a little bit of time and familiarize yourself before we get into some other more independent projects, which I hope to get into. So, all right. So when you open up a new part, if you went up to this button and said File New, it's going to open something that looks like this. You're going to have an opportunity down here to open up previous parts that you had been working on down here. Or you can open up a new part, a new assembly, presentation, drawing up here. One of the differences is that kind of bothered me at first is when and we're mostly going to deal with parts. So typically you're going to say new and you're going to say part. We'll get into assemblies later and then drawings right near the end of the semester. But for a while we'll be dealing with parts. If you double click this button, it's going to open two new parts. So I'm going to click this once, and that actually opened really quickly. A lot of times there's a lag, or at least on my computer there's a lag. Click that button once, and it kind of doesn't look like it's doing anything. At least mine does. And so you wait, and then it opens. But otherwise, you'll see down here in the lower left corner, I've got part 4 open. If you double click, you'll have part 4 and part 5 down here. So just a word of warning, a little different than SolidWorks in that way. And I'm going to begin my tutorial as if you've never used a parametric modeler before. So if you've never used SolidWorks, just so we're all on the same page. What I call this up here is the ribbon toolbar up here. So that ribbon toolbar can change based on your tabs. So these are the tabs up here. The two tabs you're going to use most often are the Sketch and 3D Model tabs. So in SolidWorks, this is called Feature, and this is still called Sketch. But Feature and Sketch, or 3D Model and Sketch, those are the two tabs that we'll be using pretty heavily for a while. Okay. You're going to click on the Sketch tab because we need a two-dimensional sketch to base all of our three-dimensional parts or features off of. So you can't get a 3D model without a 2D sketch first. So we're going to first go to Sketch, Then it's gonna allow you to select one of these tools. And now it wants to know, where do you want to put that 2D sketch? Do you want it on this plane, this plane, this plane? So these are labeled according to their axes. So XY, the XY axis plane, the YZ axis plane, or this other plane here, which I typically call these top, front, side planes. But that's fine. I'm just going to select this top plane basically. It's going to let you're going to be able to draw a sketch for the time being. You're going to be able to sketch on planes or on surfaces. So once we create some three-dimensional geometry, you can then place a sketch on a surface that you created. So we'll go through that. Okay. So this right here in the middle, this yellow dot, this is called the origin. If I just draw a circle out in space, you're going to notice that I can drag this around by its center point. I can also increase its size like this. What we need to do, ideally, this has no definition right now. And by definition, I mean it can change by dragging it. And so it's not locked down, basically. So we lock down sketches using two tools. We're going to use constraints. So if I drag this over here, it's now connected to this origin. I can change the size still, but I can no longer drag this around. It's constrained. Okay. So the other way we fully define a sketch is using dimensions. So constraints and dimensions. So I'm going to add a dimension. I'm going to click my dimension tool. I'm going to click the circle, and let's call that 1.5. So now our sketch is fully defined, and we know that because the lines are black. So if I try to change size, if I drag this, it doesn't work. If I try to move it, also doesn't work. This is a fully defined sketch. That's kind of our goal. Different from AutoCAD, your dimensions drive the size. They don't just tell you how big something is, they control how big it is. So if I want to change this, double click, say 3, and enter, and now we've got a bigger sketch, or a bigger circle, basically. So that's the difference between parametric modeling or one of the difference between parametric and a CAD package like AutoCAD, where you would otherwise have to redraw that. Okay, then once we've got some two-dimensional sketch geometry that's defined and constrained, we can then go to the 3D model tab up here. You'll notice that some of these tools are grayed out. That is because we don't have enough geometry to allow certain tools to be active. So you can't split anything because we don't have any geometry to split yet. So once we get some geometry, then this tool will become blue instead of gray. These we can use. So we're going to say extrude. We're going to zoom out. And there's multiple ways to control our extrusion. We can drag it up and down with an arrow. I prefer this input right here, so we're going to say 6. There are other controls here. We can flip it up and down. We can go midplane, so it's symmetric on either side. These are all super helpful at different times. So right now, I'm going to do a simple one. I'm just going to do straight up from the sketch plane, and we'll say distance is 6, and we'll say OK. All right, so now we've got a cylinder. Okay, also that just popped into this tree, we've got an extrusion. That extrusion, when I hover my cursor over it, the cylinder is highlighted in green. So if you notice, that happens to indicate, so if you have multiple extrusions on a part, which you will, you'll end up with a lot of extrusions. It's helpful to hover your cursor, and then you can see which extrusion that relates to. Underneath this, if we press the plus sign over here on the left, here is our original sketch. And so this sketch is what this extrusion is based off of. So it gets nested underneath that extrusion. All right. Then we're going to repeat this workflow over again. So we're going to go back to the Sketch tab. We're going to select the circle again. And now it wants to know what plane or what surface do you want to sketch on. So if I expand this, I could select the same planes that were available to me in the beginning, or I can select this top surface of the part. I'm going to select the top surface. Once I select that, now I can start sketching. And there's our origin again. Our origin shows up on the new sketch. I'm going to go ahead and start my circle right there. I've got a purple circle because it's not fully defined yet. If you're in a tool and you're like, oh no, how do I get out of this tool? I just keep drawing circles. The escape button on the top left of your keyboard, that's the easiest, quickest way to get out of the tool. So escape, I'm going to just window these and I'll delete them like this. And now I'm going to go ahead and add. And so we can move this still. I'm going to go ahead and add a dimension. Let's go 2. And now we've got a fully defined circle on the top plane or on the top surface of our cylinder right there. To rotate your parts, you're going to press the shift and hold the shift key down, and then you're going to press and hold down your mouse wheel at the same time. So 2 buttons at once, and you can rotate like this. If you just have your mouse wheel held down, like a button, without the shift key, it pans back and forth. And if you roll your mouse wheel in and out, it's going to zoom in and out. And it zooms to your cursor. So if I put my cursor way over here, it's going to zoom to my cursor. So if you zoom out and you're like, I want to zoom in on the center of this circle, put your cursor over the circle, and then you can zoom right in to your circle. Okay. So now we're going to go back to our 3D model tab. So you can kind of see this work progression. Go sketch to 3D model, sketch to 3D model on the tabs up here. Interestingly enough, SolidWorks does it a little bit different. Instead of extrude, they have extruded cut button. So if you're coming from SolidWorks, you're actually going to press the extrude button again. And I'll show you how this works. You're going to press extrude, and then down here, you've got options. You've got join, which would add material. So as you can see in the preview over here, it's wanting to add an extrusion, like we did the first time. This time, however, though, I want to add a cut. So we select the cut feature, and we need to select the correct direction. So if we cut in this direction, Inventor is going to yell at us because there's nothing to cut. You're just cutting air. So we're going to bring it back down here, or we could do it that way, or we could leave it up here, and we could switch over here. We could say flip, and it flips up and down. Again, you could do like a mid-plane cut if you wanted to cut up and down. We're just going to flip it down like that. And you could tell it to a specific distance, like 5.1875. You could say through all, which is going to just send it through no matter what, the full distance. Or you could send it to a surface or to an object or up to next. So there's a couple of different options that we'll get into later. Let's just for now stick with through all, like that. And we'll click OK. And we've got a basic cylinder section. So, all right, so that is kind of the basic workflow. You've got you start with a sketch, you fully define that sketch, then you move on to your 3D model tab, where you can extrude or extrude cut or perform another 3D modeling option. As you create features, they will come into this, this menu down here. So now we've got extrusion 1, which is highlighted, and we've got extrusion 2, which is our cut extrusion. Each one of our features was developed from a sketch, and those sketches are nested underneath. And that's the basic workflow for SolidWorks as well as Inventor. Excuse me. So that workflow is something we need to practice and get comfortable using for a little while. And so right now, I'm going to refer you to Solid Professor, where Solid Professor will kind of review in different ways, or in some cases in a lot more detail than what I went into here. And then near the end, there's a very short assignment. Go ahead and do the assignment at the end of those videos. And I apologize, there's going to be a lot of video watching today, but you can take it slow, and you can rewind the videos as needed. You can watch them as many times as you want. A lot of times you'll go back and watch them again, even later in the semester. But go ahead and go to Solid Professor. There's a class now, CAD 240 Spring 2021, that you can join. And you can get started on that, and then let me know and reach out if I can help in any way. And yeah, good luck, have fun, and we'll talk to you soon.